Welcome everyone to the February edition of Coffee and Conversations. I'm just very happy that you are taking the time to listen in on this incredible conversation that I'll be having today with Sandra Miller. Sandra, welcome. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. I miss you.
I miss you too. It's like a reunion across the country. And I know many of you know Sandra. She has been an incredible supporter of Women Up since day one. But for any of you that are not familiar, Sandra is one of our unique and powerful female leaders. She opened the first Engel and Volkers in California, in Santa Monica, in 2009. She is the principal broker. She is also a top producer with accolades that she won't let me go into. But I do want to say she's also unique in the amount of time that she spends volunteering with organized real estate, with her local association, and also with the California Association, which is when I first got to meet and work with Sandra. And she has, along with the theme that we have for this year in terms of reinvention and doing new and different things, you've really done that in your career. Sandra, why don't you give us a little bit of insight into what you were doing before real estate?
So before real estate, I was in the wireless industry. So I sold phone numbers back when we had beepers, if you remember those.
Goodness.
And it was really my first job when I got to California. I worked for a beeper company, and it took off from there. And I was
about riding the wave of that industry, right?
Yeah. So my phone number, my 213 phone number, is 36 years old because I got it right after my son was born, and wow. I've never changed it. So that's why, back then 213 was the only area code for all of California, right? We had 714, 213, and 818. That was it.
That was it, right?
Yeah. Now we have 50 of them or something stupid. But so anyway, so I sold airtime, and so it's a really funny story how I got into the business and then what I did with it. So I met this woman who had an independent wholesale company that sold phone numbers to retailers, and she liked me and said, "Oh, honey, you should come work for me." And so I interviewed with her husband, who ran the company, and it was probably a 15-person company at the time. And it was commission only. So a little scary, right?
Yes.
And I was not, I don't come from wealth, right? I didn't have a safety net. And I had already figured out in my mind what her other salespeople were making and how I could do that business and be really successful in that realm. And so when her husband offered me the job and offered me like a prepayment of my commission as kind of a guarantee for the first 3 months, I'm like, oh, no, you just keep your money. I'll be fine. And I took the job and I never looked back. And so after doing that for a few years.
And what did doing that mean? Did you have to contact people and sell them on why they would need a wireless number?
I had to cold call stores that were selling phones or beepers and build up my own network of stores that sold under me. So going in, I knew that I had to sign up 100 stores that did 10 numbers a month to make $100,000 a year. That was my initial goal. And and at that point, I think I'd never made more than $40,000 a year. This was a long time ago, but so I had in my mind figured out what I needed to do and figured out where I needed to go. So I took the job, started the first day in the job. I arrived at 7:30, which the office wasn't even open yet, and so I'm waiting in the parking lot when the controller gets there at 8 o'clock, and I went in and I just never looked back. And the women that worked there was 4 other saleswomen that had been there for a while, and they were all very comfortable. They were all making between 150 and 200,000 a year. And they're like, there's no room for you in this business. We have all the business. We have all the clients. You're never going to make it. And I totally ignored him, put my head down.
What a welcome.
I know it was interesting. I'm like, okay, fine. And put my head down and did the business. And within a year, I was making the $100,000 that I set out to, because I did sign up 100 accounts that did 10. And I had a really stable business because I did it that way. And they didn't, because they had a couple accounts that were doing large numbers with them. And so if one of those accounts leaves, they're up, the creek and scrambling because their income is vulnerable, and mine never was. So anyway,
what a training ground for real estate in this career, right?
So that's why this is important. So after that, a couple years later, the founder's son decided he hated law and was going to come in and grow the company. So at that point, I think the company was doing 2,000 or 3,000 phone numbers a month, and we were just in the LA market. And so the founder's son came in. He was brilliant, and he was an attorney, which I tend to really get on well with attorneys, because I'm OCD and a little.
Your brain works that way.
Yeah. So I got along really well with him. And he saw my potential and in the sales side of it, and he promoted me to launch new markets. And by the time I left, and he did it smart, because I didn't have a college degree and still don't. And he paired me with someone to do the operations side of it, who was an MBA from finance. So we were the dynamic duo, and the two of us launched 7 markets. And when I left, they were doing close to 85,000 phone numbers a month.
Whoa.
We made them very wealthy. And so I left after 9/11. It was too hard. My mom was sick, and I couldn't travel like I used to. And
so
I was going to have.
It was more personal reasons that you left than career satisfaction, or.
It was a complicated situation, but because I left, they offered me 2 years of full pay to not compete with them locally.
Oh my goodness.
So, and I never wanted to compete with them locally, because I only want to work for the best, right? I'm one of those people that I want to work for the best. I never want to think about changing jobs or anything like that. I would have probably still been there if my mom hadn't been sick and 9/11 hadn't happened. Okay. I mean, it was like you with CAR. You're comfortable, you love it. Right. Let's just stay and do it. Right.
Right.
So, but I always knew in the back of my mind, if something ever happened in that career, I would go into real estate, just because it's the only other job for a salesperson that has absolutely unlimited. It's actually the only job that has unlimited income potential, because even if you're selling medical equipment or drugs, for example, which is, pharmaceutical sales is also up there, and people can earn big money, right? But what happens with those is there's always a boss, and the boss is always cutting your territory so that you have to scramble the following year to make the same amount of money, right?
Right.
So it's hard to climb. So I always knew that I would do real estate as my second career. And I had the same experience going into real estate as I had going into wireless.
So when did you get your license? Did you do that before you left wireless?
Oh, absolutely not. When I'm 100% in on a company or what I'm doing, I don't have time for anything else, right? I couldn't, I worked as hard doing that as I do for myself in real estate. And I guess everyone has their own definition of what hard work is. But I think in wireless, there was many times that I fell asleep as I was transmitting reports in my hotel room at midnight, right? I mean, it was like you work.
So you were used to that.
Yeah, I was used to working, 60 to 80 hours a week, right? 7 days a week. And so when I transferred that work ethic to real estate, it worked out perfectly. But the funniest thing is that I had so many people that told me I was going to fail in real estate. It's like, I remember I did. So I left wireless. I was compensated for 2 years, so I had no pressure. So I took a year. I loved to race on my inline skates at that time. And so I traveled around the country, and I interviewed different people in different offices just to try and figure out how I was going to start my real estate business. right? Because I started from scratch. I didn't want to work for another person. I didn't want to make anyone else wealthy on me. I wanted to do it for myself this time. And I had the luxury of doing that because I was still on salary. Right. So anyway, so I did that. I did all the market research. I opened up I got my license. I got my broker's license. They allowed me to get a broker's license right away because I had been managing so many independent contractors for so many years.
Right.
So, you know, because
they grandfathered you in.
They totally did. Now that wouldn't happen today, but it happened back then.
Right.
And I had to fight for it. Don't get me wrong, but they did it. And I found somebody locally that I could ask questions for who kind of mentored me. I paid him to mentor me. And he was just an old coot and he was perfect. So I started advertising for 6 months before my office was open. Got my first phone call, took my first listing, and never looked back.
And this was in Santa Monica?
This was in Santa Monica, one of the hardest markets in the world to be a successful realtor. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know that I had an uphill battle.
You didn't know you were doomed for failure like they were telling you.
I did not. Yeah, I didn't. Although I did have people tell me I was making a huge mistake. I was absolutely going to fail, not going to, I was going to be unhappy. I needed to go work for them. That's how big of a mistake I was making. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had so many people tell me that. It was challenging to block off all that chatter.
So did you have your own brokerage and then you found out about Engel and Volkers? Like, how did that happen?
So I've always loved to travel to Europe. Okay. And so my best friend's in Norway. And you go into any European city and you see these really cute real estate shops on the retail level that you can walk in and talk to people, right? And that's not how real estate was being done here. There was no retail shops. And so I wanted to open a retail shop. So that's what I did. That's what was my specialty in wireless. I wrote a book on running a successful store in wireless that was distributed through the Consumer Electronics Association. So, I mean, that I knew how to run a store. I know how to welcome people and make it's hard to run a shop, right? You have to be there. You have to show up consistently.
And you have to be on.
You have to be on, and you have to know how to have employees and, and merchandise and whatever. Anyway, so, and that same thing holds true for real estate. So anyway, I wanted that. And so I opened that, and then I lost a listing to someone who said I wasn't international enough. And of course, neither were they, but nobody was back then. And so I started researching, which is my forte. I love to do research.
Right.
And I found Engel & Volkers, and I never looked back.
That is a match made in heaven, I would have to say, right?
Yeah. And so I had picked up a few bigger mentors by that point. And so I asked Steve, what I had to fear going into this franchise arrangement, right? Because it's a lot of money. The build out was, $500,000, which was a lot of money to me at the time.
Yeah.
And still, it's still a lot of money today, and launching a brand that no one ever heard of and no one could pronounce the name was also a risk. And he said, my biggest risk is that they fail, and I'll have done it for nothing. And so I did it.
So what was the first year like?
Was
it hard? Were you scraping by, or did you get traction fairly quickly?
I got traction pretty quickly. I was very blessed. One of my first year, was it the first year? Yeah, the first year. I was one of the listing agents on Fleur de Lis, which was the $125 million listing. And I got that strictly because of the brand. And I didn't sell it, but it didn't mean it didn't help me. It totally helped my business, right? I look back on that and I think that owner from the bottom of my heart, because it forced me to learn the luxury game really fast.
Right.
So,
how would you describe the luxury game? What are the things that you need to know to operate in that market that are different from your, standard subdivision?
You need to know design. You need to know what, this clock that's sitting on the mantle, right? You need to know if it's worth $1,000 or $1 million, right? You need to have some sense of what's in these homes. and the finishes, what makes a bookmarked marble wall so important, right? What type of flooring it is, what type of construction it is,
Right.
and all the higher end finishes that you need to talk. So you need to learn to walk the walk and talk the talk.
So it's a whole nother language when
It totally is. And I'm not from that. I mean, I didn't grow up with antiques and I didn't grow up with wealth. And so
with art collections.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, whoa, this is overwhelming. But I did it.
One of the things that came out in the conversation we had last month with Bernice and Connie were how some of the missteps or failures, if you were, although I was schooled in, these aren't failures, they're course corrections. But the idea is just that, you keep going and you make mistakes, you learn from them and you keep going again. And I'd be interested in kind of looking back, were there any key moments in your career that you can look back and say, yeah, I learned a tough lesson and it was worth it, or it wasn't, or anything to kind of get it. It's never smooth sailing all the time.
Oh no, during the crash, I almost went bankrupt. I mean, it was really, really close. I think I came out of the crash about $1.5 million in debt.
And so
because,
what, in terms of what were the law, what did that look like for people today that are new, don't understand what it looked like when housing prices were falling? Can you tell us what that looked like?
Well, it wasn't the crash that so it was the total meltdown, right? The business basically just stopped. I had 35 listings on my books, right? And not one of them sold. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and my overhead at the time was about $50,000 a month. Okay. And I didn't have a big savings account because remember, I'm a newer broker, and I was building, right? So I had all the costs associated with the franchise. I had all the costs associated with the build out. I launched in 2009, right? It's expensive to have luxury listings. You have to market them properly. You have to advertise them properly. I mean, it was by the hair of my chinny chin chin that I made it through, honestly. And I wouldn't have if it wouldn't have been for a couple really good friends.
It's so interesting from the perspective of today's market with inventory at historic lows, to think that in not that distant a past, you had 35 listings and
right. Yeah, we would never have that today, ever.
No, no.
I've never had that. I've never carried that many listings again.
So what did you learn from that experience?
I learned the value of a dollar. I do not take my luck for granted anymore. I save. I have a very large savings account now. I'm very liquid because at the time I had a lot of access to money, right? But what happened in the crash is they took the access away. They shut down people's credit lines. They shut down they shut down your what's it called, the mortgage credit line, right? They shut down. They like halved all of the credit card balance availabilities, if not taken it away completely. I mean, and like overnight, they're like, "Oh my God, she's in real estate. Let's just wipe her out." And so I will never be in that situation again, right? Right now I can go 2 years without selling a house, and I could pay for everything, and I'm really happy with that.
So your advice to someone who's thinking about getting into the business today would be have a significant cushion behind you, right?
No, because you can't, when you're first starting out, you can't wait to have that cushion. You just can't. Okay, right. And my advice is if you think you're good enough, go for it.
Love that.
I'm not going to tell somebody not to, if you're good at it, do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you wait till all the ducks are in a row, it's never going to be a whole nother game, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you're gonna, when you start a business, you're an entrepreneur, you're gonna go out on a limb. I mean, even the biggest companies have failed, right? So don't let the risk of failure stop you from going for it.
So when you look back on your career from the position, and you're still very active and will be for many years, but kind of looking back, what are you most proud of?
I was proud of what I did in the wireless business because that was, that was the Wild West, and it was a very male dominated business. And I just wiped the floor with everybody. And I taught myself to do it. Back when you had to order books from the library, you couldn't Google answers, right? So again, I had no formal training, and I was leading a sales force of 175 people. And so I did the work, and I did the research, and I was very proud of what I did in that industry. And then I was looking back on it now, I'm really proud that I was able to just block out all the naysayers and transition it to building my own wealth.
Right. It sounds like that was a theme. Every time you wanted to try something new, people were saying, you're not good at it, it's not going to work.
Well, don't you find in life that people's first thing when you're going to take a risk or make a change, they tell you don't do it, you're going to fail? Or they tell you all the reasons why you could possibly fail, like they're doing you a favor?
Well, I think I was like the opposite from you, because I was kind of stuck in a situation that wasn't great forever. And everyone was saying, Leslie, change it, So when I finally, started making these big changes, everybody was really behind me, but it was, I'm not going to say it was too little too late, but I do have a few regrets about that. So I really, I learned a lot listening to you, about what it's like to just go for it, and to really jump off the cliff and know you're going to land and you're going to be okay. And it's going to be worth it.
I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen is I could fail, right? And I have to start over. I mean,
right.
So my whole life has been that. I mean, it's like, I have scars, and they told me when I was younger that I was never going to be successful because I wasn't pretty, or I wasn't it's like because I wasn't perfect. Right. So you have people telling you from a young age that because you're not perfect, you're not going to ever get anywhere.
Right.
My choice was to either take that and live with that life, or I wanted something bigger for myself.
Blow it up and say no.
Yeah. It's like, bite me. I'm going to do this.
So let me ask you this, here you are today. Let's go back 30 years. Are you where you wanted to be, where you thought you would be? Does where you are today look like? Because you seem to be someone that sets very concrete, specific goals all during your life. Are you where you wanted to be?
I am. I don't set concrete goals anymore because I think my goals would be less than what I can achieve. Right.
Okay.
So for me, because I just don't, it's like, what is a big enough, audacious enough goal that I can throw out there? I don't have those right now. Right. Do I want to do more business? Yes. I am systematically trying to figure out how to do that at the moment. And I could give you a specific number, but I won't. But so to me, that's not a big audacious, right? That's just, I just need to figure it out and make it happen. And that's kind of how I've lived my whole life. It's just, I know the life I want is what I'm living right now. And I don't have to worry about money. I get to help people all the time. I can donate money. I help people with different causes. I get to do what I want to do. And this is exactly what I wanted from the time I was very young.
Right. It sounds like you love what you do. I mean, it's engaging you kind of intellectually, mentally, physically, all of that.
If I didn't love what I was doing, I would do something else. I mean, if you hate your life, that's your fault. You can change it.
So let me ask you this. If you were going to do something else, what would that look like?
Oh my God, I don't even think about it.
Have you ever thought about, gee, if I weren't doing real estate, I would really like to.
No, maybe sell boats or planes. It would be a sales job, right? Yeah. So, yeah. But it's a lifestyle. So I guess, that would be, but I'm never going to change. I'm going to do this until I die. I just, it's like, it's what I love. I love it.
Well, you seem to have a tremendous amount of self-confidence and or lack of fear. People are telling you, don't do it, you're going to fail. And you're like, forget it, I'm doing it. Where does that come from? Where in your childhood or your parents or in your soul does that feeling like I belong on this planet and I have a right to my dreams and I'm going to do it? Because that was always a challenge for me. And I just love feeling that strength come from you.
It's funny because I've never given myself a choice, right? I've never considered it a choice. I think the strength comes from growing up looking different from everybody around me, having scars, because it's not, I mean, there's many people. I mean, we're doing all of this training now on diversity and inclusion and everything else. Right. And I got to tell you, when you start, I was burned at a very young age. And so
I never even knew that. So this is a
yeah, I don't talk about it. No. I mean, it happened when I was 3. So I went through my whole life scarred.
Wow.
And so if you let that stop you, I could be a ward of the state or whatever, right? I was just never, maybe it was my mother who instilled it on me to the unconditional love, right? But I never had a choice. Wow, I always had to pave my own way, because there was always someone from a very young age that was willing to throw up roadblocks for me.
One of the things that I've kind of taken from our conversation is that your attitude is, I am going to create this life for myself. You're not sitting there waiting for the right job or waiting for the right opportunity. You're creating those for yourself. And I think that is an incredibly empowering message.
Well, no one's ever offered to hand me anything, and I couldn't, because I was scarred. I was always drilled into me that no one's going to give it to me. I'm not going to, find some sugar daddy that's going to take care of me. I was going to have to build my own life. And that's what I did. Right.
So what do you attribute your, I would say, tremendous success to? Is there like one thing you can point to that you were kind of willing to do that others aren't, or anything like that?
I ask myself that all the time as I'm training people, because you can't want someone to be more successful than they want to be. Right. And so in all of the people I've trained, that's the biggest stop from most people stop themselves from being successful. They don't want it as much, and they're not willing to put the work. And so I'm always willing to do the work. Right. So whether I have to read a, 500-page document at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night because it's something's due the next day, or I have to write a report, whatever it is, I'm willing to do the work. I've always been willing to do the work.
Well, and I can attest to that because I have been to numerous admin meetings with you over the years. And Sarah and I were always, let's talk to Sandra and get her notes, because your notes were always better than our notes. And it also happened in our strategic planning committee when you were on the committee. And we always knew that, because we'd be kind of running around doing all the, room temperature and catering in addition to everything else, and you always had great notes. So I think you were one of the few people in the room that was doing that. So I was very impressed early on in my friendship with you, with your ability to do that. And what I want to ask you is, what motivates you to volunteer? You are busy. You are in a very high-end market. I'm sure you've calculated your hourly rate when you give your time away, and you have been just amazing with Women Up and with CAR in general. Like, what drives that? Why are you doing that, and why are we so lucky to have you?
So initially, I got involved because I thought it was important that I wanted the pro standards piece, right? So I actually, a male broker manager of a local shop here mansplained me a couple times I was like, oh no, I'm not going to have that. And mind you, at that point, as soon as he did it, I read the entire Pro Standards manual so that I could mansplain him right back. And I quoted the manual to him, and then the next day I signed up for the Pro Standards Committee, and never looked back. Actually, I mean that's been very fulfilling for me. I'm actually super excited because I'm on the NAR Pro Standards Committee this year.
Oh, congratulations!
And that wonderful. That takes a lot to get on those committees. So especially that one. So anyway, so that's how it all started. And then I got sucked into the local association on the global committee because it was a baby, and I was a global brand. And so I thought it kind of matched. And I was just able to help that along. And then, I got invited to be a board of directors, and then Diane Mans, love her to death. She invited me to be a CAR director, which it was a little after the fact because I went around the local association and applied to CAR Direct because I didn't know I was supposed to go through the local association.
But Diane is wonderful, and she knows the ropes for sure.
Yeah, she fixed it. And so that's how I got into CAR. And then I just love having a seat at the table to make the decisions that impacts the whole industry. And I think that helps. It helps me. It just helps me stay accountable, right? You get a little lazy when you are running a brokerage and you're an agent. And so the 8 a.m. meetings and the 7 a.m. calls and I just think it helps to stay accountable. And then it got a little bit out of control. So I've pulled back some now.
Good course correction.
Yeah, a little course correction. So yeah, I gotta remember, what I'm in this business for. And the friendships I've made have been so impactful for my life. And I'm sorry, running a brokerage is a little lonely.
Right. Well, we have just all loved you so much, and having you involved and giving us this bird's eye view of, the luxury West LA market is always fascinating, but just the depth of your kind of intellect is really a joy to I'm happy you're sharing it with us. So let me ask you this: what are you looking forward to in the future? What lies ahead for you?
I'm really looking forward to the end of COVID, as whatever that's going to look like. It feels like we're almost there. Yes. And I have a grandbaby due. My first grandbaby is due in April, and I'm super excited about that.
Congratulations. How
thank
wonderful.
You. I know, I'm so excited. And just more travel and just more of the same. I mean, I'm pretty blessed. I'm looking at buying a place in Italy, so I have a place to go to for a pretty long stretch of time in the summer.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
And
that sounds great.
Just more friendships, more travel, more Leslie, more Sarah.
We'll swing by in Italy, no problem.
I know, right?
So just a few questions to kind of wrap up. And one is, I'm always interested in if you have a morning ritual, reading, meditating, exercising, like how do you start your day and set yourself up for a great, success the rest of the day?
So I'm up at 4:30 or 5 every single day. Right. Whether I'm on vacation or not, I can't seem to help myself. And I read the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times every day on my iPad. I don't take notes, but I do. I'm sorry, I don't highlight, but I do take notes. And why I do that is because because of the clients I serve, I'm expected to be aware of what's going on in the world. Right. And I'm also looking to see if they're in the news. Yes. Or if there's anything in the news that I think would be interesting to them. And then I will cut and paste and email those out to my clients. I also fabulous. Get emails early in the morning. And I answer my emails early in the morning. I had somebody text me this morning at 7. He's like, sorry for the early text. I'm like, oh, you're late to this party. So
I've connected with you on so many levels, but I also am a morning person. So I totally relate to that.
Yeah. And then I do try and I haven't been able to exercise for the last 8-9 months, but before that, I was a ferocious Pelotoner. Right. And I'm looking forward to getting back on and doing that again.
Wonderful.
And then off to the office. I try to be here by 9.
So my final wrap up would be just any books, podcasts, anything that you have found inspiring that you might want to recommend. And I totally agree on the newspapers. It's so important to know what's going on, and
It really is.
we get like the paper and I highlight it, so by the time John wakes up, he's getting this paper that has yellow highlights all over it.
That's funny. So I'm a voracious reader. My family's a family of readers. And so it's not unusual for me to read, I want to say a ridiculous number, like 200 books a year. Okay. But it's every genre you could ever imagine. So I actually just read a series on Maud, which was an English queen, right? It's a historical fiction, but accurate historical fiction, and it's relatively accurate. So that was an interesting thing. And I'm also reading The Soul of America right now, trying to figure out. It's excellent. My brother recommended it to me, who was a history major, and it really gives us a broad understanding of kind of what's going on in the world right now. So
I'm going to check that one out. That sounds excellent.
And then I'm also reading Family Office, a comprehensive guide, because it's fascinating to me because I have so many family offices that I work with. To understand the inner workings of them helps me to serve them better. So that's what's on my really light stuff, right?
Right. No, I appreciate you sharing them. I'm always interested in picking up new things because we do a lot of reading here as well. It's a lot of fun to have time to do that finally. Sandra, this has been wonderful. It is just on a personal level, just wonderful to spend some time with you. I miss you a lot, and
I miss you too.
Really appreciate you sharing kind of the secret sauce of how you do what you do. So I hope to see you soon. And just from the whole Women Up community, from Sarah and Deborah and all of us, just thank you for being there with us and the time, the effort, showing up. We really, really appreciate you.
Always. And the Women Up is just so close to my heart because I'll tell you, every time something has gone wrong in my life, it's usually the result of some woman being jealous.
Yeah,
it's funny. I re-listened to Leslie's conversation with you, and I could not believe she had the same thing happen to her.
Yeah,
as what I've experienced. So it was like, it's just, we have to stop that, and the only way it's going to stop is if we really get everyone focused on lifting each other up instead of putting other people down.
100%. That's the mission, right?
Yeah.
Be supportive, and lots of work ahead of us.
I know. And you think you're there, and then you'll have something happen that you're like, oh no, it's still happening, right? But being a woman is so interesting.
It really is. And every time I get mansplained, which still happens on a regular basis, I just sit and think, okay, this is still going on.
Yeah. Oh, I had an agent mansplain me a couple of weeks ago, and my whole office heard him because he was on speaker, and they laughed because they knew I'd make him pay, and I certainly did.
Pay back as hell, right?
Yep. But I made him pay in the right way, right? He was
telling me. He learned from that.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't. No. He was going on and on about how this property was absolutely never going to be worth where I had it listed, blah, 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 blah. I mean, literally on and on for half an hour. And I'm like, okay, great. Then I guess we're not going to do a deal. And I hung the phone up. And he submitted an offer, and it sold for where I had it listed.
There you go. Payback as hell.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sandra, thank you so much. And I hope I get to see you soon. And congratulations on your grandchild.
Thank you, Leslie.
Really great.
All right. Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you for being here.